So when I came here in 2001, I first had to work at a Nordstrom warehouse at minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, I think it was $6 an hour or something like that. And it was so boring as hell. It was like, you can, because I was doing data entry for all. So it's like 8 hours of data entry. Can you imagine that?
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely crazy. So in order to inspire myself and just keep going, was that I treated it like a game. So what I wanted to do was to make sure, as an entrepreneur, you want to mitigate risks.
Yeah.
So whenever you transition from a corporate job to starting your own business, you want to have it be the least risky transition as possible. So in order to do that, I really, took my time. I was super patient. I wanted to build up enough capital to last me, number one, so that when I made the transition, even if I had 0 clients, I would survive just fine.
Right.
So in the financial crisis, late 2008, I put 75% of my net worth into 3 stocks.
Okay.
Yes.
So 11 years ago.
Yes.
So you go out and start your own company. Is that WealthArch?
Yes.
Okay. So when you went out and started your own company, how did you feel?
I felt like so free.
Yeah.
So probably in early 14, before I made the transition, I felt like when every day that I went to work, I was like so depressed and so impatient. Like, I need to quit now, but I know I can't quit because in July, that's when the additional 15% contribution hit.
Did you know there's a technology that's actually an app on your phone that uses sound waves to tell your brain what you want your brain to do? We had a young man that was on a guest on our podcast, the Mike Litton Experience, who had a traumatic brain injury. He was sleeping 3 hours a night. He's using NewCalm now and he's sleeping more. Go to newcalm.com, Mike15 promo code. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience podcast. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. Mike is passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
Earl Yaokasin, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited for our time together. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go up to today, and we're going to talk about these amazing things that you're doing, helping people strategize about their wealth. Thanks again for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Mike. I appreciate it.
Appreciate
you. Before
man.
I begin my story, I just hope that my story does inspire and connect and relate to your audience. So I was born and raised in the Philippines. As early as 3 or 4, my dad taught me math. So I already knew how to do multiplication. I was already memorizing multiplication tables, divisions. And in the car, when we were driving to various places, he would quiz me. What is 432 plus 375? Something like that. And I can tell you that as a kid, I can do that faster than if I were to do it right now. So
right.
I was very well practiced back then.
Wow.
So
go dad.
Yeah.
What did your dad do for a living?
He was an entrepreneur. So he was a business owner. Yeah. And as early as kindergarten or first grade, whenever there are math related activities at school, and in the Philippines, we have them regularly, where we would have to fill out like a 50 to 100 page questionnaire, and they would time us. I would always come in first because of that training.
Yeah.
And anytime there's like a game where the teacher will make up a game, I would always come in first thanks to that training. So ever since I was younger, that already set me on a mathematical, logical, path in life.
So you had a confidence.
Yes.
Yeah.
That brought me, a lot of confidence for sure. And the other thing when I was younger was that I was also a bit entrepreneurial in a sense. I actually, for whatever reason, I can't explain it. It's just I had some affinity towards just making more money. So as early as first grade, I would go around the school and look for soda bottles for the recycling credit. So this was in, maybe in the late 80s, something like that. So people would still have, drink from soda bottles. And in the very large football field, people would just leave them there because they're lazy to bring it back to the canteen and for the recycling. So I would pick them up and get money for it. And in exchange, I would get a delicious Filipino barbecue skewer. Have you had one of those?
I don't know if I have.
Okay.
Every Filipino food I've ever had in my life, I have dearly loved. There's a I can't remember the name of it, but it's a kind of like a tiny burrito.
Oh yeah, lumpia.
Lumpia.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
I've eaten so much lumpia, I thought I was going to die. Right? It's so good. Like,
Yeah.
I don't even know. And I'm sure it's not that good for me, but I'm absolutely addicted to it. Like, anytime I ever go to anything, right, I'm looking for the lumpia, right? I'm literally like, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Filipino food is so good, but so unhealthy for you.
Oh, yeah.
That's so good.
Well, I always like the stuff that's not so good for me,
Yeah.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure, of course.
What did your dad do? I mean, he was an entrepreneur. What kind of business did he own?
Yeah, so he was part of the family business. Our family business was based on coconut oil.
Oh, okay.
And so he grew up in a province called Leyte in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
And he was kind of the liaison in the capital region where I grew up in Metro Manila in the Philippines. So that's what his business was.
Where'd the math thing come from, do you think?
That's a good question. And I never asked him. I need to ask him that. And, before the show started, you mentioned that you'd realize things that you'd never realized before. And here we go. I need to ask him that question. Why did you teach me math at like 3 years old?
I would love for you to ask him that question.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Think about it. There's, parents very rarely do things without an intention.
Yeah.
Right? And if you ask, one of the things that you'll find oftentimes is it's something other than what you thought it was, right? Yeah. Like, you'll find out that, oh, well, so-and-so in the family was terrible at math, or, right? And it caused this or whatever. And it's like, all of a sudden you just go, really? How did that work? Right? So I recently spoke at Stanford University. Absolute dream school, absolutely one of my favorite places on the planet. And I was invited up there as a guest of honor for their dinner. And it was a public speaking class. Okay. And I got up there and I thought that the instructor had invited me to come teach. So I thought I was going to be teaching. So I sit down at the head table with him at the dinner and I'm like, so what am I teaching? And he goes, you're not teaching. You're giving a toast. And you have 2 minutes. And you can't go over your 2 minutes. That's a mortal sin here. Right. And I'm like, okay, Bruce, it takes me 30 minutes to introduce myself. Right. But here's what we did. So he gave me the 2 minutes. Right. So I got up in front and said, listen, I try to bring value everywhere I go. I'm going to give you 2 things. Number one, if you ever have stage fright, because it's a public speaking class, if you ever have stage fright, just love the audience more than you love yourself. Stage fright goes away, because stage fright's about you're concerned what you're going to look like up in front of these people. Okay.
Yeah.
If you potentially screw up, and we all do, we all stutter, we all have stammers, we all, say a word that we didn't mean to say, whatever. Okay. Fact of the matter is we're imperfect creatures. But if we love the people that are in the audience more and we care about what they learn more than we do ourselves, there's no stage fright.
Yeah.
The second thing was I suggested that they do something that I had recommended to my children. Both of them are grown. At the time, they were 24 and 26. Now they're 25 and 27. But I recommended to the class, I said, I recommended to my children that they take out a blank word processing program, blank document. And at the top, in the largest font they can, write in "stay in curiosity." And below, write in "stay out of judgment." Print it, put it up in front of where you work. Because we're not curious enough. We talk at people, we don't ask. Yeah. We need to care enough to ask. So I'm literally writing a book on questions right now, right? Not joking. Because it's like one of the things that I've discovered in the last 2+ years of this podcast and 354 episodes, right, is questions are a big deal. And we as human beings don't go to the effort or care enough sometimes to ask. Okay. So I call myself the king of the stupid question. Why? Because I don't prejudge questions before I ask them.
Yeah.
So I don't think in my mind, oh, well, that's silly. Or, oh, that's, somebody's going to think that's a bad question or whatever, right? I just ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
And
go.
just like what we were talking about before this
Yeah.
podcast, you have a tendency to bring out certain things about your guests that
Yeah.
no one else can. And
Yeah.
like for me, just like this episode, you asked probably what 90+% of other podcast hosts wouldn't ask is,
Yeah.
why did your dad teach you math at an early age?
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
It fascinates me.
Yeah.
Right? Because they do everything parents do that adds to their children's experience, adds to their confidence, adds to their capability, everything. They do it with a design. There's something there, right? It's kind of like that guest I was telling you about before that had that issue in childhood, right? And now she's writing books about it. Now she's in their children's books, right? And now she's trying to do what she can to be a positive role model in adulthood, right? Her kids are grown now, but she's trying to be a positive role model because it's something that weighs on her heart. When we have things in our life where things come up short or things happen, right? It affects us, and we don't want it to affect our children. We don't want it to. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
we're
absolutely.
always looking, and you know this from experience. We're always looking as parents to create a better tomorrow for our children. We want our children to have a better upbringing than we had.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's incredibly important to us. And so one of the things that I can tell you is my children had a better childhood than I did on purpose.
Yeah.
Right? And I told them, I said, point blank, if you ever sound like you're spoiled, entitled, anything, I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma. If you ever get to a point to where because you'll have a better lifestyle than I did growing up, if you ever sound like you're headed there, we're taking you to a horse ranch locally, and you're going to muck out some stalls for free until we work that out of you, right? Yeah. And so every once in a while that would flash up, and I go, "You ready to go muck out some stalls?" They're like, "So what's muck?" So I explained to them what muck was, right? Yeah. And they're like, "Yeah, ooh," right? Right? It was the right kind of antidote, Yeah. So anyway, sorry, we got off on a tangent.
Yeah,
we
no
do
problem.
That here. We do that
no
here.
Problem.
This is a tangent-rich environment.
Yeah, we're just having a good conversation. That's all, right? Yeah.
So
but I can totally relate.
How long did you live in the Philippines? Did you grow up there?
Yes, I grew up there. I moved into the U.S. in 2001.
Gotcha.
So, by the way, I didn't give you my age. So that's when I was 23 years old.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what was your favorite thing about growing up in the Philippines?
My favorite thing growing up in the Philippines is the culture and the people and the friends there. So I feel like over there's a lot more community.
Mm-hmm. Close
knit. And friends would really hang out a lot with each other, a lot more here. And how we were talking about connections earlier, about how people today feel more isolated despite technological advances. But over there, when I was growing up, I felt like I was part of a group. I was part of a good, friends, family.
Yeah.
We would hang out all the time, and there was no technology, not much. There's no cell phones, nothing. So we would just really spend a lot of time each other, not with our phones in front of each other. Like most kids today, they're busy playing video games with each other on the phone, something like that. Yeah. So that's definitely my favorite part growing up.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So in high school, you went to high school in the Philippines.
Yes.
In high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Math. No surprise.
I love this. You gotta call your dad and find out. And you gotta thank him. Seriously. Call your dad and just thank him from the bottom of your heart, right?
Yeah.
Because you'll find out there's something there. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
So did you have a favorite teacher in high school?
Yeah, I would say that there's no real favorites, but a few stuck in my mind, and I think it's worth sharing. So one of them, when I was in my senior year, she was my advisor. She's a very astute person. But until this day, her words really stick with me. Is that when she was asked to describe me, she described me as a man for all seasons. And, what that means is just I can ride through difficulty and hardships, but I can also do well in great times. So no matter what happens, I'll be fine. So in other words, but the more important thing that sticks out to me was another teacher, and this one I can't forget. I can't even remember. I know it was her, but I can't remember the subject. But the instructions to me on a specific test were to underline the answers. And I circled the answers, and she gave me an F, and it was like a final exam. Okay. So this was like serious. So I got an F on a final exam because I circled the answers and did not underline it as instructed. And that really opened my eyes and saying, oh, I have to really pay attention to the details.
You have to do what you're instructed to do, right?
Yes. You have to listen to instructions. It's just because you get the right answer doesn't mean that you did it correctly. There are other things that you need to do. And just like when we're working, right? Just because you do things correctly, if you don't communicate it properly or something else, then it's not enough, right? So yeah, that's a key lesson.
So I think we already know the answer to this question, but I ask everybody. So I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
Who was the most influential person to you growing up?
Yeah, it would have to be my parents. So I mentioned about my dad teaching me math, but my mom always repeated like a broken record, and it's annoying how often she even says it until this day, which is kind of annoying, but she always repeats, live 2 levels below your means. So that stuck with me. I've always been a frugal person, so that's never been a problem. But she always keeps repeating it and repeating, like a lot of moms do.
When you talk to your dad about the math thing, ask your mom about why she says that.
Oh yeah, that part I know. So so she repeats that because when we were younger, and as well as when she was younger, we were very poor. She was very poor. Her family was very poor. I think she had 7 siblings, something like that, in the Philippines, very common. And they would all live in a very small house. My grandparents had a small store, and they would help work in the store, but there's really not enough money to feed everybody. And in fact, one of the bad habits that I got, which is kind of interesting, which is because they were so poor and sometimes there's not enough food on the table, the 8 brothers and sisters would be in a race to finish their food. So when I was growing up, everybody was eating fast, and I would eat fast too. So until today, because I learned that from my parents. But yeah, because there was not enough food. Hey, if you're slow, sorry.
You're going
no
hungry.
Food for you.
No lumpia for you.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. No lumpia for you. Sorry.
So when I was growing up, I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And it was my grandfather's farm, right? Nobody on the planet ate faster than my grandfather.
Oh.
Well, I wanted to be him, right? I wanted to be him. And so I ate fast. I still eat fast, which is not good for me. I'm 59 years old. And people will sit with me and go, you know something? Watching you eat, you'd think you were the youngest of 8 kids. And if you didn't eat that fast, you'd go hungry, right?
Yeah.
I just had a grandfather that didn't believe in wasting time when it came to eating, right? That man just got after it,
Yeah.
So crazy.
Yeah.
So after high school, where do you go?
Yeah, so I went to the best college, arguably the best college in the Philippines, called Ateneo de Manila University. And I also went to the toughest course in that school, which is management engineering. And it was very math oriented, as you can expect. And
here we go.
But as early as a sophomore year, I turned on the CNBC channel and said, because I was always good at math and good at games, and said, I know I can do this.
Mhm.
I can do this well. And it feels
Mhm.
like a game. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And that started my lifelong journey into investing.
Finance. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wild. That's
Yeah.
so cool. I love that. I love the math investing that, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you graduate from college, right?
Yes. Yes.
And at some point you immigrate to the US. Can you talk
Yes.
about that process? What
Sure.
happened? What took place?
Yeah. So before I moved, when I was all the way as I was younger, so I'm Filipino Chinese to be,
Yeah.
precise.
Yeah.
And in the Chinese community, whenever it's your birthday, whenever it's a holiday, Christmas, etc., Chinese New Year, they would usually, when I say the older relatives would usually give you red envelopes. Have you
Mhm.
seen one of those red
Mhm.
envelopes with money?
Yeah.
So yeah, ever since I was younger, I would save all of those, and I also sold a lot of different things, from snappable bracelets, CDs, concert tickets, cell phones, fireworks, so on and so forth. So I saved up all that money. I had all this money. My dream was always to go to the US, because in the Philippines, even though I worked at the stock exchange for a short period of time, I realized that the stock market there was more about who you know rather than what you know, in terms of if you made money or not. So you could be the smartest person alive, but if you didn't have connections, you didn't have the inside information, you're not going to make money.
Well,
So
and
my goal,
there's a difference between the Filipino stock market
yes,
and the New York Stock Exchange,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
There's a difference. And if
A
you're
big
going to play in the
difference.
big leagues,
Yes.
you kind of got to be here.
That's correct. And
Right?
that's precisely the reason why I came here. So I took my life savings and I gambled on myself that I can start a life here and
Mhm.
independently. And before I moved here, have you ever read the book from Paulo Coelho called The Alchemist?
No.
It's a fantastic book. So it's about living your dreams. And
Mm.
so and when you live your dreams, there's a lot of distractions, there's a lot of temptations to sway you away from your true north.
Mhm.
And I didn't get tempted or get swayed, so I really wanted to chase my dreams, and that's what I did. So when I came here in 2001, I first had to work at a Nordstrom warehouse at minimum wage.
Mhm.
And back then I think it was $6 an hour or something like that. And it was so boring as hell. It was like you can because I was doing data entry for
Mhm.
all. So it's like 8 hours of data entry. Can you imagine that?
Mhm.
It's absolutely crazy. So in order to inspire myself and just keep going, was that I treated it like a game. So hypothetically, for example, if I was able to do let's just say 1,000 entries in an hour. Next day, I'm going to try to do 1,010. And the next day, 1,020.
Mhm.
See if I can beat the previous day's record. And I constantly was able to do that. And everybody was, within a month, was like so surprised. Who is this new guy? Like, doing a lot more work than people 10 years in the job.
Setting all these records.
Yeah. So that was my first job, because nobody knew about Ateneo. Nobody knew about management engineering. And nobody cared if I graduated on the dean's list on my senior year with honors. So it doesn't matter. I had to start from the bottom at minimum wage, but obviously that wasn't enough to make ends meet.
Yeah.
So what I did was I transferred to a local appraisal company and for real estate.
Mhm.
So it's PCV Mercer. Since you're in this industry, have you heard of them?
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, they're in Pomona.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked there as a coordinator. And later on, I got more and more responsibilities as they saw I did well. But still, it wasn't enough to sustain myself. So I decided I needed a second job. So I got a second job at Bank of America and as a credit card collector.
Mhm.
And as you can imagine, that seems like a tough business.
Kinda.
But similar to how I reprogrammed my mind when I was at Nordstrom, I decided to try to make it like a game and try to see how much I can collect, how good I can be. And what I did was I noticed what everybody else was doing first. Okay, so what were the really good collectors doing? And a lot of them were actually very aggressive and lying. And I said, that's not my personality.
Right.
So I wanted to do the opposite. So I wanted to be super kind and super nice. And what everybody didn't do was, aside from being nice, is that nobody was super organized. I was super organized. Every person I talked to, I would notate on a sheet, on a sheet on our conversation, what's happening, and when I should call them back. So immediately when it was time for me to call them back, I would be right there, the first person to collect when their next paycheck comes. So I was like really organized like that. But because I was really kind and I didn't tell lies to the customers, the customers really wanted to work with me more than anybody else. So, and I did really well there, and it didn't feel like a crappy job. It was fun. And so when I was working those two jobs, I lived in Rancho Cucamonga, then I drove to Pomona to PCV Mercor, and then I drove to Pasadena for Bank of America. And
that's a commute.
That is crazy. And I did that for maybe 1-2 years, something like that. And the drive was killing me. So, and on the way home, because I was so tired, I had to like just sing so loudly in the car to not fall asleep. I was just really dead tired. But all that hard work and dedication did eventually pay off. So I eventually moved to finding a job as a financial advisor with American Express Financial Advisors in late 2002. So after a year and a half of doing like crazy work, I was able to become a financial advisor. But to my surprise, the financial advisor here seems like more like a salesperson. They're not given a lot of training. All the company cares about is who do you know, how much money can you make, can you meet this quota, so on and so forth. And I was so surprised. I mean, coming from the Philippines, I have no idea of what it was like. I thought people were really financial advisors here were really trained and were really out for their clients' best interest. But to my surprise, it's all about just the commission.
It's all about the numbers. It's all about being a cog in the wheel.
Right. And I hated that. I absolutely hated it.
I can imagine.
I decided that I would move to a different company in a different role where I'm not supposed to sell. So I moved to Bank of America Investments, which is now Merrill Lynch, in 2003, as a registered sales assistant for the top 2 financial advisors in the Inland Empire. And to this day, I'm extremely grateful to both of them. And I learned so much, but I didn't have any sales roles at the beginning. So later on, when they saw how I had skill in terms of picking stocks and investments, they decided that they would hand me over the stock picking part of a client's portfolio, and then they would do the bonds or the fixed income part of the portfolio.
Wow.
And my performance for our clients was actually better than the in-house corporate division that specializes in doing all the stock investments for the company.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was extremely fortunate to do that.
So it's Merrill Lynch that you joined.
It's now Merrill Lynch, but before it was Bank of America Investments at that time.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. So
and then Bank of America bought Merrill Lynch.
Those two together.
Yeah, they combined
the Great Recession. B of A bought Merrill Lynch.
That's correct.
Right, and now it's so okay. So B of A had an investment. I didn't realize they had an investment division. Back in 2002. So wow, that's wild. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about WealthArch Investment Services. We're going to talk about kind of how you got there, right? And what the most fulfilling thing is about doing what you do. We'll be right back. Did you know there's an app that has no side effects that allows you to use sound waves to tell your brain what you want it to do? It's called newcalm.com. And it's amazing. It literally uses sound waves. If you want to tell your brain to go to sleep, if you want to tell your brain to recover, if you want to tell your brain to put you in peak physical state, if you want to tell your brain to focus, if you want to tell your brain to take a power nap, you can do all of these things and more with newcalm.com. Go to newcalm.com today, promo code Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. So we're back. We were talking earlier before the break about your time at what is now Merrill Lynch, but it was B of A Investment Service, right? And you were involved in stock picking and that kind of thing. So you ended up performing really well in the stock picking side, which again goes back to the whole math thing with your dad, I think.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I think he instilled a confidence in you that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And I think he did it on purpose, right? You're about to find out why, but so you're at Bank of America, you're stock picking. Can you talk a little bit about how that went? Like, obviously you're successful at it.
Yeah.
Did it feel fulfilling? Did it feel like something that you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always wanted to do it since I was a sophomore in college. And so this was really my first real experience doing it for other people.
Yeah.
And it was so fulfilling to make money for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's wonderful.
That's so cool. So how long were you with B of A?
Yeah. So I was with them from 03 to about 07. So quite a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Quite a while. In 06, I started studying for the CFA designation. It stands for Chartered Financial Analyst designation. So it sounds like you're familiar with it. I'm sure you have guests probably that have the designation.
So why? So let me just ask you. So you're stock picking, doing your thing, right? 4 years, you're happy, all that.
Yeah.
What makes you decide that CFA is the option for you?
Yeah.
Talk about that for a second, because so just so you know, there's a mindset, right, to deciding that and it's not easy. This CFA thing is not an easy, CFP isn't either. You're a certified financial planner, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When you make that decision, it takes a commitment.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, everybody comes at it differently in terms of their motivations. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure. So it comes down to two things why I chose the CFA designation. So one is that I knew in order to progress, I needed to do something in order to get to the next level. And it was either an MBA or a CFA.
Yeah.
I tried for the MBA. I got a really high score on my GMAT, but I only applied to Stanford, Wharton, and Harvard. And the acceptance rates are not high. So
pretty slim.
I didn't want to go anywhere else. So I decided, hey, they didn't take me, so I'm gonna go the CFA route. And instead of trying again, because I was thinking, okay, maybe I should try again, try a broader set of schools. But then I kind of did the math in terms of my money, where okay, I'm gonna spend $50,000 a year at that time, approximately, for tuition and board. And for 2 years, so that'll be $100,000 total. And what is the return on my money?
Right.
It all comes down to that,
right?
I am an investment
all
guy.
About the return.
What will my future net worth trajectory be like if I go have my MBA? And if I were to, pay $100,000, that's pretty much all of my nest egg. And I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So I decided to study for the CFA instead, and which is very cost efficient. And like you said, it's extremely difficult. So the pass rates, for anybody who doesn't know, there are 3 exams once a year, more or less. And the pass rates are about 20 to 30%, depending on the level.
Yeah.
So to pass everything on the first get-go without having to retake, it's less than 10% easily. And I finished all 3 without a hitch, and no problems at all. But in any case, so that was my decision to go for the CFA, and it was so cheap. And now I was able to build my nest egg because of that, because I was able to invest my money really well during the financial crisis. Had I used my nest egg to pay for tuition for an MBA, I wouldn't be where I'm at today with WealthArch.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's, when you start looking at $100,000 versus, right, all of a sudden you're looking at it, and being in the investment side, you're literally every day looking at the return that your clients are getting on their investment. I mean, it literally, right. And I've interviewed Stanford MBAs here, and every one of them will tell you that it was a great move and it was the best thing they ever did and all this kind of thing. The thing is, they never talk about what the return on investment was,
Yeah.
right? They just talk
Yeah.
about what the experience was and sort of the connections they made and all that kind of stuff. And great, right? It's just, what was the bottom line? And you're a bottom line guy in a bottom line business, right?
Yes.
And the CFA is, and I think the number is probably less than 10%, in terms of the people that actually pass the first time, because it really takes dedication. It's not,
Yes.
that's why I was asking you about the mindset, because as humble as you are, and I love how humble you are,
Thank you.
this is a commitment. Okay.
It is.
And with your work ethic, probably doesn't feel like that big a commitment to you, but it is. And deciding to do that feels like to me that it was a real pivotal moment in your career. And like you said, if you had spent that 100,000, right, which is basically your nest egg, the money you would have used for investing,
Yeah.
where would you be, right? You wouldn't be near where you are now. I mean, I think it's important that we have that conversation, because people think about a Stanford MBA, Harvard MBA, right? Big deal.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a big deal. Yes, it's a big investment, right? But when you start looking at it in terms of return, start looking at it in terms of, I'm going to put this out to get this, right?
Yeah.
Different story. It's a different conversation. And I feel like it's a conversation more people need to have. That's why I wanted to talk to you about it and get a feel for, right? So you pass your CFA, and what do you do after that?
So after I passed the level 1 of the CFA,
Right.
I was able to already get a job at the Capital Group here in Los Angeles. And they are the 4th largest investment firm at that time, behind Fidelity, Vanguard, and BlackRock.
Wow.
So
that's some rarefied air.
Yeah. And they treated their employees well. They treated me well. I initially started as a portfolio control analyst, who is kind of the in-between between compliance and operations, things like that. But I carved a niche for myself, being so passionate and obsessed about investing, where I was eventually the only person where I would have to be on every single investment call, read every single investment analyst report, communicate with portfolio managers, and then translate that to the operations team, who would process if there was $1 billion contribution to a fund or 100 million withdrawal, which stocks would they buy and sell. So I was kind of the go-between. I was the only one who did that. I created my own role. And so every day I was a learning machine. And that is the key to how I have been able to generate, excellent investment returns. It's just learn every day, try to be smarter than the previous day. And I was not only learning from one person, but from the whole investment team, because I get to read and listen to everybody. I get to see what worked and what didn't work. I also tried, a lot of different things for myself.
There's a running theme here. Right? So how long were you with the Capital Group?
For 7.5 years, so quite a long time.
Wow, that's kind of the longest stint that you've had, right? Or up to that
yes,
date?
up to that point. I was definitely trying to climb, the corporate ladder up to that point. But when I was interviewing for an analyst role at the Capital Group, I typed up I think it was a 10-page report on American Express. So this was maybe 2009. So late 2009, approximately, something like that. So the person who looked at my report said, I didn't like your formatting and I didn't read your report one bit. So I spent a lot of time on that, because back then, American Express was trading at about, $30 a share, right? So in a short bit of time, I think it was maybe 3 years, the stock jumped to in the high 80s, not including dividends. So if you include dividends, it was like 90 something.
Wow.
So it was a triple in 3 years. And then I said, if you're not going to read my report, even though that was an incredible idea that did better than anybody else's idea, this is not the place for me.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided I need to start preparing to start my own firm.
So what were you missing in the format? Did they ever tell you?
Yeah, I didn't have nice graphs and charts and things like that. It wasn't
visually
the spacing,
appealing?
the font. It was the visuals. It was someone else can do, but
unbelievable.
Yeah. What you want is somebody to be able to get good insights, good research that will make clients money. That's what you want.
Yeah.
It's not about the format.
It's not about the graphs and the photos.
It's not about appearances. At the end of the day, it's about the bottom line.
Wow.
And that just disillusioned
people amaze me.
Yeah.
They just do. The things that people hang up on. And what I think you'll find if you and I know you haven't, but if you looked into it, that person had some sort of insecurity where you were concerned. Like they felt threatened by you, and that's what they hung their
I don't
hat
know.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like they got to look down their nose at somebody, Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wow, that's awful. So you end up making a move.
Yes.
Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do was to make sure, as an entrepreneur, you want to mitigate risks.
Yeah.
So whenever you transition from a corporate job to starting your own business, you want to have it be the least risky transition as possible. So in order to do that, I really, took my time. I was super patient. I wanted to build up enough capital to last me, number one, so that when I made the transition, even if I had 0 clients, I would survive just fine.
Right.
So in the financial crisis, late 2008, I put 75% of my net worth into 3 stocks. I purchased Wells Fargo, US Bancorp, and American Express. And from the price that I loaded up, those were double, triple, quadruple in 5 years or less.
Right.
So my net worth jumped significantly.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was still super frugal. And when my coworkers would go out to eat, I would bring my own lunch and so on and so forth. I would not spend money. I keep telling my coworkers, $1 compounded in over 30 years is $66. So if I spend $10 on this meal, that's $660 I'm not spending $10.
Right.
So I was saving so much money all throughout I was there. And then additionally, their benefits were really good, where we get kind of like an automatic 15% contribution to our retirement without lifting a finger.
Yeah.
Plus, so compounding my own investments, and my own investments did better than anybody that I worked with, portfolio manager, analyst, because of the how I loaded up during the financial crisis. I had a lot of capital when I decided to transition in 2014. So that was one thing. The other thing I did was to, again, further minimize risks, is to have people lined up to sign up with me in my first year before I made the move.
Right.
So that I'm not starting at 0. So even though I wanted to quit and start my own business in 2009, I waited until July of 2014 to actually do so. So I was in planning mode for 5 years before making the leap.
Gotcha. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. It doesn't surprise me though that you would do that, right? You literally, everything you've done in your entire life up until now has been pretty prudent, right? You've been on purpose. You've continued to build, you've continued to add, you've continued to invest, right? And you've continued to reap the benefits. So you go out and start your own company. And this is what year now?
2014.
2014. Okay.
Yes.
So 11 years ago.
Yes.
So you go out and start your own company. Is that WealthArch?
Yes.
Okay. So when you went out and started your own company, how did you feel?
I felt like so free.
Yeah.
So probably in early 14, before I made the transition, I felt like when every day that I went to work, I was like so depressed and so impatient. Like, I need to quit now, but I know I can't quit because in July, that's when the additional 15% contribution hits, and I need to wait until that happens.
Right.
So I was really like, oh, come on, every day is so long.
Yeah.
But then once that happened, I felt so free. Just like in the movie Jerry Maguire. Have you seen it?
Yeah.
Right. He sings Free Falling while he's driving. So that is the feeling. That is the feeling that I felt once I started my own company.
You mind if we talk about how small this world is?
Go ahead.
So on our podcast a couple of months ago, we had Lee Steinberg on. Lee Steinberg is the #1 NFL agent by far worldwide. Okay. Lee Steinberg was followed for 2 years by Cameron Crowe, who wrote Jerry Maguire.
Wow.
He wrote Jerry Maguire about Lee Steinberg, and Lee Steinberg actually has a cameo in the movie.
Oh, wow.
So when Cuba Gooding Jr.'s character gets that 11, he's on ESPN and they're taping with Roy Firestone, and he has that $11 million plus contract that just came in.
Yeah.
He's literally standing there next to Troy Aikman. He introduces. So Tom Cruise's character, Jerry Maguire, walks up and he goes, "You remember Troy Aikman from the Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's Lee Steinberg."
Oh, wow.
So he's been on the podcast. He came on a couple months ago, and he's coming back on around Super Bowl next year because he has a new book coming out, and we're gonna review his book and promote it.
Oh, that's great. Isn't
that crazy?
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I've watched that movie like more than 20 times.
Free Falling, I love it.
Yeah. And in
favorite
more than
Tom Petty by far, my favorite Tom Petty song, period.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That is so cool, man. So that was the feeling. That was how you felt, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're just and just a few short years prior to that, you were having to sing loudly in your car just so you could stay awake.
Yes.
You've kind of come quite a ways, right?
Yes. Yeah. One thing I didn't say is that during those years when I had 2 jobs, my lunch was half a Subway sandwich, and then for dinner it was the other half because it was $5.
Yeah.
So eventually now I'm eating. I don't eat at Subway anymore that often. So it's definitely quite a way.
Yeah.
So I've definitely I felt like not only was I free career-wise to do whatever I want, but I also was financially free because I was able to invest well, and I finally felt like I no longer needed to work like a madman. I no longer needed to live like a caveman. So it was like, it's a really new chapter. It's like all that hard work finally will pay off.
That's awesome. That is so cool. What a great story. So what have the last 11 years been like with WealthArch?
It has been wonderful. And I kind of adopted the mantra from Jerry Maguire, where less clients, more personal service.
Yeah.
And I, just like the Alchemist book that I talked about earlier, I just believe in my dream that if I continue on doing good for other people, then success will come by itself. So I intentionally was not doing any marketing at all.
Yeah.
I would just study annual reports cover to cover, proxy statements cover to cover, be on conference calls, things like that. That's what I was doing day in, day out, trying to get better at investing. And, I've seen the fruits of my labor over the last 5 years, where the results have been phenomenal over the last 5 years. All the hard work that I've done since the beginning has finally been paying off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. You earned it.
Thank you.
You earned it.
Thank you.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're interested potentially in talking to you about investing, what would you say is the top thing? What's your favorite thing about WealthArch and what you do for your clients?
The top thing I would say is that 100% of my net worth, excluding my emergency and opportunity fund, is invested the same way as my clients.
There you go. So you're right in it with them.
I am with them. And if we look at mutual fund managers, Morningstar did a study a few years back. Out of 10,300 of them, only 5,900 managers don't have even a single dollar invested in their own mutual fund. So that's absolutely
terrible stat.
Crazy. That's
a terrible stat.
Yeah. So, and if you look at the people who have 100% of their net worth approximately invested in their own thing, it's very rare.
Yeah.
And so what I tell my clients is that some advisors will tell you, yeah, I'm a fiduciary. Your interests are better than mine. But sometimes that's just talk. For me, it's really, I walk the walk and I talk the talk by having all of my net worth pretty much invested the same way as my clients.
So do you have your own fund that you have your money invested in alongside your clients? So is it an investment fund, or how does it work?
Yes. So every client has their own individual account. And so rather than pooling all the money together, everyone has their own individual account. And the reason behind that is my intention is to have everybody's portfolio be customized.
Right.
If I had a fund, then everybody would have the same exact percentages, even though that's not appropriate for them. So let me give you an example.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So in 2001, I never invested in Netflix ever. It was trading at $700. And by the way, this information is only for educational purposes, not investing advice. Please consult an advisor, blah, blah, blah.
Please.
These are not. But this is just for story, so you can understand where I'm going with.
Right.
So I never bought Netflix ever. In 2002, from 700, it dropped to 200 and below. So I bought some at 222, 200, and 170 something. And today it's at about 1,100, in about 3 years, right? Yeah. So the reason why I want everyone to have an individual investment account rather than a fund is because today I think Netflix is not cheap, not at all, nowhere even close to cheap like what it was in 2022. Yeah. So if I had a fund and I had a new customer and they would invest in that fund, guess what? They would own Netflix at 1,100. They would purchase it at that price. Right. And I don't want that. I don't want to do that for new clients. Right. For new clients, I am only going to buy the cheap stuff, and that doesn't include Netflix. So that's the reason why.
Yeah, I got you. So you're basically, and it sounds like this has been happening for your entire career. You're looking at value. Right?
Yes.
You're looking at something that potentially has an upside. By the way, Warren Buffett does the exact same thing, right?
Yes.
Some of the best investors, Charlie Munger, his partner, right? Some of the best investors in the world are looking at property or looking at stocks, looking at things to invest in, right? Investment vehicles, where there's a discounted value for whatever reason, or a discounted amount that's literally what Berkshire Hathaway was, right?
Yes.
Berkshire Hathaway was a value play for Warren Buffett and eventually Charlie Munger, but Berkshire Hathaway was a textile company.
Yes.
Right? And he thought enough of the future of that company, and they were on the skids financially, and he bought because he was literally expecting an upside, right? Look at his entire career. Look at all the decades that he's been doing this. It's literally the same thing over and over and over again, right? He bought Wells Fargo in the downturn.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Just like you did. He bought B of A just like you did.
Yeah.
He loaned Goldman Sachs like $5 billion or something.
Yes.
In the great, during the Great Recession when everything was going pear-shaped, That's the kind of thing that investors do, and they do it, and doing it helps them and their clients, right? So, and that's, like, I wouldn't want to buy something that's, I obviously am a Netflix subscriber, full disclosure, but I haven't invested in them, right? The time to invest in Netflix, I think, was back when you were investing in it, where it was $170 a share, right?
Yes.
So, and by the way, full disclosure, I listened to the founder's book, That'll Never Work. Mark, I forget his last name, but fascinating book, by the way. If you ever get a chance to listen to it, I highly recommend it. It's a great story. But you know I love stories, right?
Yes, yes.
So if somebody's listening to this and they're interested in talking to you about investing their money, having you help them invest their money, how can they reach you?
Yeah, the best place to reach me is to go to a special URL that we created for your listeners. It's mywealtharch.com/Mike Litton.
Okay.
So mywealtharch is spelled MyWealtharch.com/Mike Litton. And there they would find how we're different, how WealthArch is different from other firms. They can also sign up for a 30-day free investment update from me. And then also find a way to schedule a free consultation.
So is that a newsletter, the update?
It's not a newsletter. So a typical newsletter just tells you, oh, this is what's happening with the market, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But here, you will get what my clients receive in investment updates. And what that includes is what I trade in real time, what happened to our investments after 24 hours after earnings got reported. So you'll get a detailed report. So it's really an incredible value for your listeners.
So can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why is the 24 hours after earnings have been released? Why is that important?
Because the stock moves fast.
Okay.
And sometimes there is a overreaction or underreaction on the news. Gotcha. And then I can take advantage of that overreaction or underreaction.
Didn't Netflix just do a 10-for-1 stock?
They did. Yeah.
So what was that about? Any idea? I mean, I know you're not investing in them, but
yeah. Well, no. I still kept all my Netflix shares. So I didn't sell a single share of Netflix from where I purchased it 3 years ago. But the 10-for-1 stock split basically just means that if I had 100 shares of Netflix, it will become 1,000 shares. Okay. But the price will also be divided by 10. So if I had hypothetically $100,000 total dollars invested in Netflix, I will still have 100,000. Nothing's going to change except the price is going to get cheaper, but I will get more shares. So I actually tell this to a lot of people that stock splits, they are just one short-term bump up for one day, and then after that it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never asked anybody, so I was
sure. Yeah.
I was curious.
Yeah. Feel free. Of course.
So if you had one piece of advice, somebody's listening to this and they're thinking about investing in stocks, right?
Yes.
If you had one piece of advice for investors that's your single favorite piece of advice, what would it be?
It would be the big money is made not when the market's going up, but when it's going down.
Okay. You got to explain this.
Yes. So those are my words. Those are my favorite words to say. But it's really based out of Warren Buffett's, one of his famous philosophies: be greedy when the market is fearful, and fearful when the market is greedy.
Yeah.
So in other words, when the market's going up, up and up, people, the normal human tendency is to chase and follow and not get left behind, like my neighbor, my friend.
Yeah, ride the wave,
right?
Yeah.
Yes, that is the normal tendency.
Yeah.
But what we have seen throughout history is towards the end of a cycle, and no one can predict exactly when cycles end, but towards the end of a cycle, when it does turn, many times indexes like the S&P 500 do nothing for 10 years approximately. And so buying things without evaluating whether the stocks are cheap or the stock market is cheap is not a good idea. So the best time to buy is when everyone's panicking and prices are down. So I was telling, when my older daughter was 8, I was teaching her this concept, is that, okay, her name's Sophie. Sophie, if you were buying toys every year, would you prefer that the prices of toys go up or go down? And to her, it was simple. Go down, of course, right? But in the stock market, people have a different mindset. It's like they cheer when the market keeps going up. But no, if you have positioned and strategized properly, you will have enough gunpowder to fire when everyone's panicking. And that is when the big money is made.
I got you. So I have a question for you.
Sure.
That's probably not a fair question.
No problem.
But I'm going to ask anyway because you're the expert here.
Sure.
Right? So the other day, and I know there are people that are wondering this. Recently, 60 Minutes did a story, a profile on Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Yes.
And he wrote a book called 1929. And I think it was Leslie Stahl asked him, do you think we're repeating that trend? In other words, because 1929, for people that don't know, is the year before the Great Recession or Great Depression. Pardon me. Great Depression happened that next year.
Yes.
How do you feel? And I don't know if you've read the book or not, but
I have not.
But how do you feel about what he said when he was on 60 Minutes about what's possibly going to happen with the stock market?
I agree with it to an extent.
Okay.
And the agreement part is that the stock market is super expensive. It's going to have a correction at some point.
Yeah.
The question is when and how much.
So are we in the middle of irrational exuberance, do you think, to quote Alan Greenspan?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely we are in the middle of that.
Yeah.
And there are so many similarities, not only to 1929, but also to prior bubbles such as 1971, 1999, and 2007. There are so many similar. I show so many charts and exhibits in my investment updates to my clients. But going back to answering your question, is that what I don't fully agree with him is that I don't think it will create another Great Depression. And the reason for that is the banking and financial system is significantly different today than what it was previously.
Yeah.
So even in 2008, it's significantly different. So banks across the board have a lot more funds, capital, have a lot more capital on their books versus before. It was very scarce, especially in the Great Depression. And when the financial system is in trouble, everything seizes up like a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
Because the financial system is much stronger than ever compared to 2008 or 1929, I don't think we will see like an 80% stock market correction. I don't think that would be the case. But I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if we would have somewhere between 40 to 60% of a decline.
Wow.
So it's still a big decline.
Yeah.
But not like a Great Depression.
Not
decline.
people getting wiped out. Yeah.
Right. So and like always, when that happens, make sure you're buying.
Yeah. No kidding, right? Like you said, right?
Yeah, don't panic.
So,
make sure you're buying.
So I heard something not too long ago that during the Great Depression, I want to say it's Sir David Templeton made his
Franklin
fortune.
Templeton.
He made his fortune.
It might have been Franklin Templeton, but yeah.
Like during the Great Depression.
Yeah.
Made like billionaires were made during the Great Depression.
That's when the big money is made for sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So a couple of questions.
Sure, of course.
Again, probably not fair, but I'm going to ask anyway.
Please, I would love for you to ask.
You've been an amazing sport. You brought up the Great Recession, and obviously for reasons, right? So there are two movies that I like about the Great Recession, right? When everything went pear-shaped. One of them is Too Big to Fail.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie?
I think I've read the book, but not the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you think of that story?
Yeah, I think it was just absolutely fascinating and nuts. There's so many crazy stories during the financial crisis.
Yeah.
It's just, we were on the brink of death. We were, like if we were a patient, it was already seizing.
Yeah.
When Bear Stearns failed, and then Lehman, and then Merrill, and then every bank was really in line next to fail. It was just absolutely crazy, and it was happening over a short period of time too. And we were so fortunate that our central bankers were, even though they were a little bit late, and they should have done a lot of work in 06, 07 to prevent this kind of disaster, but they did the right thing in late 08 by absolutely backstopping all the banks and all the financial system to make sure that we will survive. And that was the time, once that announcement was made, that was the time I went all in on American Express, Wells Fargo, and US Bank Corp. So I needed that backstop and that guarantee before going all in.
Yeah, it sounds like you and a lot of investors did.
Well,
right?
actually, no, because when they backstopped it, so this is just representative. So
Yeah, it's okay.
American Express was about 24, Wells Fargo, US Bank Corp about 16, 17. The lows were actually not met yet, because what happens is that there was a disconnect between psychology of the market and actual fundamentals. So those stocks actually dropped 50% more from where I went all in. So for example, American Express from 24, guess what? It went to 12.
Oh my
And
goodness, I didn't
in
realize
early
that.
09, it went to 12, even though the backstop was already in place in late 08.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I was telling my wife, I was lying down beside her in bed. I was telling, I studied American Express forwards and backwards. They are not going under. They didn't need TARP money. They were forced to take TARP money, which is government money that they used to give to all banks to make sure that they didn't go under. So
in the movie, they hand out all these billions of dollars, right? And then they walk outside, and the Treasury Secretary, Hank Paulson, turns to his staff and goes, they are going to invest this, right? They are going to loan this out, right? We don't know.
We don't.
Right? Crazy.
So I told her, we need to load up even more, even though we went all in. But then I told her, then I contradicted myself. I said that if I use up my emergency fund and I borrow money to do this, the next time it happens, I will do that again. And that is a bad habit, kind of like drugs, that you don't want to get into the habit. So when you invest in stocks, do not ever borrow money to invest in stocks. Do not invest money you cannot afford to lose. And I didn't want to get into that bad habit, but obviously, but I definitely recognize the situation at 12. This is an absolute, money maker. For American Express.
Okay. Next movie, Big Short.
Yes.
Did you see it?
Yeah, I did see that one. Yeah. So
what did you think of it?
Yeah. I was actually in the same boat as those investors that saw the writing on the wall. So in 07, my colleagues and I at the Capital Group, there were 3 of us who hung out together all the time for lunch. We always saw the writing that people are loaning money banks are loaning money without inspections or, proper documentation, things like that. This is absolutely crazy. Yeah, nothing.
Jobs, right? Yeah.
We just need to loan money. That's absolutely crazy. And then left and right, you've got amateur people who are holding real estate seminars, and I've been to some of them because my family and friends dragged me to watch some of them. I told them not to do it because I think this is absolutely crazy. But nobody listened to me, but that's another story. But anyway, that's what happens when you're in a bull market. Nobody listens to the conservative person. But the 3 of us who hung out at lunch, we could already see and we always said, this is going to collapse at some point. And we promised.
It can't keep going.
It can't keep going like this. It can't keep going like this, kind of like right now.
Kind of like right now,
Yeah. So the 3 of us promised that when the downturn happens, we will be aggressive. And we work for the Capital Group day in, day out. We're investment people. We're smart people. But when the downturn actually happened, only 2 out of the 3 of us did it. One other person who promised every day that we would do it did not do it because he got scared. So that just tells us that even though you know what to do, when the time comes and people are panicking, it's not easy to go against the crowd. And so that's where the role of an advisor, just like WealthArch, would come into play, where you need someone who has done this before and can buy stocks for you when everyone's panicking.
Yeah, you need somebody that's a sounding board, somebody you can bounce things off of, right?
Yeah.
So, last question.
Sure.
Sorry, I've asked you.
Ask away, please.
Right? So, what do you feel are the similarities between right now and 2007?
So right now, it's the enthusiasm level.
Yeah.
And before, the enthusiasm was for real estate in 07, it was for .com stocks in 1999. Right now, the enthusiasm is for AI and crypto. So the enthusiasm is at very similar levels.
So there's similarities you're seeing between the .com bubble and AI.
Absolutely. And then to quantify that, I have graphs and charts and data where it shows you different metrics, whether I don't want to get too sophisticated for your audience, but price earnings ratio, price book ratios, any kind of ratio you can think of in the investment world. They are at similar levels or more expensive today compared to those prior two bubbles.
Gotcha.
So we are seeing not only from the numbers, but also from the psychology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I said last question. It's not. Here's the last
No
one.
problem.
How important, when you're looking at a company, let's use American Express as an example,
Sure.
a previous company that you owned.
Yeah.
How important is the management team to your confidence in becoming a share, in buying those shares?
I'm going to answer that in two ways.
Okay.
One is that it is important no matter what, because especially for a financial company, if you have a bad leader and they would, whether it's an insurance company or a bank, if they would make bad loans, if they would lower premiums just to get customers, when the tide turns, that company's going under. So management is extremely important, especially for financial company. But you also want to invest in a company where, hypothetically, even if you've got a dummy running the show, that company is going to survive. So as an example, it's Warren Buffett's favorite investment of all time, which is Coca-Cola. So that's his example.
Yeah.
If a dummy were to run Coca-Cola, 10 years from now, Coca-Cola is still going to be around and probably more profitable. Yeah. So on the flip side, you also want to look for companies that can be run by dummies, because that makes your job easier. Now, if you are going to invest, like myself, in a company where management is extremely important, then you have to be on top of every single release that the company does. That's why I do those reports within 24 hours to my clients. I'm on top of everything.
I got you. Okay. Yeah. So it's WealthArch
Investment Services.
WealthArch Investment Services. And the website address is?
mywealtharch.com/Mike Litton.
So mywealtharch.com/Mike Litton.
Yes.
MikeLitton.
Yes.
Cool. Earl, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I know we went over on time, but I had way too much fun today.
That's awesome. I did too. I feel like we could continue for hours.
We actually could. We could be here 3 days.
Yeah, for sure. Talking about investing is so much fun. So yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question? Did you know that there's a technology that uses sound waves that'll tell your brain what to do? There literally is. It's called newcalm.com. It can tell your brain to heal, tell your brain to sleep, tell your brain to do all kinds of things. It can get you fired up. It can be a pre-workout. Newcalm.com. And the promo code is Mike15. Newcalm.com, promo code Mike15 for an extra 15% off. Go today.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at the Mike Litton Experience.